recent tractate of Ketuvot, I came across this mention of this disease of Raton, and here it says, Rashi says that this was the disease that Pharaoh had, because this disease in the Talmud, it even explains a procedure about putting some mixture on a person's skull until it became softer, and they would open the skull and take, it was a little bit strange. And here, this mention of this very same disease. So it's like just things I've heard start coming together. I mean, it's not the main message of this parasha, but I'm saying it's fascinating how just the timing of, I've read that just recently, and here.
Oh, right. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, there's a lot that we could learn about that from that section of the Talmud, telling us what it is. And we've, very briefly, this Ra's son is, some people try to bring it as evidence of some sort of contagious disease. But the reality is, we see that in that part of the Gemara, it talks about the different reactions, the difference of the sages. Some of them were frightened of it and they stayed away from people. And then it says Rabbi Shua ben Levi, he would actually go and embrace these people who were sick, and he would learn with them Torah. And there's many, many lessons to learn about this. And number one is, we see that Rabbi Shua ben Levi never allowed himself to be prevented from visiting the sick. And he always knew that his role was to go to teach them and to uplift them and give them hope. And he did not fear that he would be infected by what they had. And we see that immediately after this relation. So first of all, the Gemara brings the different examples of people's responses to this this condition that people had, the different sages' responses. His is brought last, indicating that this is really the indicated course of action. This is really how we should conduct ourselves. We cannot say, oh, someone said you can't go visit the sick, therefore we're afraid of getting sick and spreading it. That's just totally an anathema. It's totally against what the Torah is saying. The Torah is saying, no, if someone is sick, it's a reflection that they're in a low state of mind. They're in a state of despair. The sickness is really a reflection of their spiritual descent. The physical this physical illness is a reflection of where they're holding spiritually. So on the contrary, you have even more of an obligation to go and lift them up. And if you refuse to go visit them because you're afraid of getting physically sick, it shows you that you're spiritually sick. The refusal to go and help another human being who's in a state of despair is a sign of the spiritual depths of the person who's refusing to go, because he has become self-centered. He's become afraid of the shadows. He's become afraid of the air. He's become afraid of losing what he has. He's lost the whole sight of everything. And so therefore, Yeshua ben Levi is saying, no, I'm going to go. I'm going to go and I'm going to embrace this man. He's sick. He's supposedly contagious. I'm going to hug him in his house, and I'm going to immerse myself into lifting him up. So immediately after that, the Gemara tells us, the Talmud tells us, that the angel of death, when it came time to take Yeshua ben Levi from this world, couldn't even get any power over him because he was so holy. And the holiness is represented, doesn't talk about his greatness and his Torah scholarship. It tells us his greatness was his love of his fellow man, that he was willing to go straight into the middle of where someone is completely ill and hug him and to uplift him. So he was able to overpower the angel of death. And it says that when he came to the world to come, he jumped straight into the Garden of Eden to the world to come. And it says that Eliyahu, Elijah the prophet, would announce his presence, saying, everyone has to stand up. But the garden, the world to come, the spiritual eternity, is filled of all these great souls, of all these great people from the beginning of time, Adam and Noah and Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov, all these great people, Moses, our teacher. And Elijah the prophet is saying, stand up for Yeshua ben Levi, because he represents the whole thrust of what Avraham Avinu was here to accomplish, what the Torah is here to accomplish, is that we are not limited by the world. We're not taking into account the risk factors and the statistics of someone's disease. We're here to lift them out of it. And that's what we have to reinstill in human beings. We have to reinstill in ourselves and in human beings the example. No, there is no limitation on how far you're willing to go to help another person. You're not scared of what they have. Now, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, in Sichas Zaran, says that this Ra'asan, which Rashi says is a worm in the brain, that's why there's this procedure, is really a spiritual worm in the brain. It comes from a lack of belief in God. These are Torah scholars that know a lot of Torah, but it creeps into their mind. They don't really believe in God. And they then descend and descend and descend until they themselves become, God forbid, immoral. And this is, now we can understand what was really happening in what the Talmud is telling us. Because why were the other Talmudic sages, they didn't want to go into the same place these people were. They didn't want to be in the same courtyard or downwind from them or have anything to do with these people. Because they realized that people were spiritually ill. And spiritual illness is contagious. If you go and allow yourself to become influenced by the person who's spiritually ill, if you spend time in the presence of a person who doesn't believe in God, he could be extremely well-versed in Torah verses. He's quoting them left or right, but it's coming across, he doesn't really believe. That is infectious. So they said, I don't want to have anything to do with these people. These people have a serious spiritual disorder. Just keep them away from me. So Yeshua ben Levi, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, you're right. They have a spiritual disorder, and you're right, it's extremely contagious. But nevertheless, I'm going to throw myself right into their space. I'm going to throw myself right into where they're sick. I'm going to give them a hug, and I'm going to teach them Torah. And I'm not going to teach them Torah because they're lacking knowledge of the verses. They already know all the verses. The guy who's sick knows the verses. I'm going to teach him Torah with emunah. I'm going to teach him faith. I'm going to bring back out of himself the belief in God, reinstill not reinstill, it's already inside of him, but it's going to bring it back to the surface. So that's what we need to do in our times. On the physical level, if you see a person is ill, God forbid, whatever the illness is, you have to break your way in to visit him. You got to give him a hug. You got to go and say, let me lift up your spirits. For his sake and for your sake. Because if you stay home and say, I don't want to get near that cough, I don't want to get near that, whatever he has over there, the cooties, I don't want to get near that, then if a person's saying that, he himself is sick. So for his own sake, he's got to get there to help the guy. And for the guy's sake, he's got to lift them up. But that's the physical. And for the spiritual, when you see a person, you get the sense he's got a lot of information. He's got a lot of godly quotes, but you start to feel he's not really connected to God's vision. He's not connected to the Spirit of God. He's lost sight of that, and he's saying things that are contradicting the Spirit of God, and he's telling people to go and do things like not visit the sick or to do things that are contrary to God's Spirit and God's will. Then what do you need to do? We don't say, condemn that person, stay away from him. We got to go give him a hug. He's a bigger rabbi. He knows all the Torah verses. He knows 1,000 times Torah verses than I do. He knows them 1,000 times better than I do. But he's lost that inner knowing, that the consciousness, the awareness of his inner knowing of that God is with him. So he needs a hug. He needs you and me. We're simpletons. We're simple people. But if we're aflame with the faith in God Almighty, we need to go and give him a hug and warm him up so that flame will reignite in him. The flame will come forth in him. So that's what we have to do. We have to take this mission of Avram Avinu, not only turn it outwards, so we have to reach every single human being, the guy out there in the street and the guy in the hood and the guy over there in the fancy house and watching something that he shouldn't be watching. All those people we have to go also, but we also have to turn inwards with this. We have to reach inwards to our own people who are of high caliber, their heads are full of good things, but something's not coming to the forefront in terms of their fire. The faith is diminished. They need a hug also. So we have a tremendous merit. We have a tremendous responsibility. to every single human being needs that smile from us, needs that call of hope from us. And that's why we don't have any time to stop. We have an urgency. This is really, really urgent because people are really, really stuck. People are stuck. Great Torah scholars are stuck, and simple people in the streets are stuck. And they're all created in God Almighty's image. And when we have moments of clarity, we all have our ups and downs. But when we have the clarity, we got to jump into action. And you know what? When we don't have the clarity and we're all feeling a little foggy ourselves, we still have to take action, because that is what's necessary. We have to keep taking action and helping other people, whether we're in the mood or not, whether we feel tired, whether we feel worn down, whether we're suffering our own doubts, our own fears. Then the answer is the action, going and helping another person. And that's what propels us and everyone further.